Hello students! Good morning, good afternoon, good night. It's me, teacher Nurul. I have a picture for you today. Have you ever seen this picture before? What is in the picture? Let's identify. What is in the yellow color? What thing is it? Yes, you're right. It is the sun. And what is in the red color? Yes, it's a giant. Can you guess what story it might be related to? Okay. Yes, some of you might be right, some of you might be wrong. Now, we're going to learn about narrative texts, especially about myths. Okay, so by the end of this unit, I expect you to be able to first identify the meaning of unfamiliar words or references. Second, explain the general idea of the story. Third, identify the plot of the story. Okay, so let's jump into the definition of myths. So, what are myths? Okay, a myth is a traditional story that explains the origins of a cultural beliefs, customs, or natural events. It often involves gods or supernatural beings and is closely connected to culture and religion. Myths are usually passed down orally from one generation to another generation. They teach important lessons and values about the world, human life, and the connection between gods and humans. So, you may be confused about myth, legends, and folktales. What are the differences between them? So, the first one, about the characters. Legends usually use real or historical humans as their character. Folktales usually use ordinary people or even talking animals. Meanwhile, for myth, it uses gods and goddesses or spirits as their character. Okay? Now, from the setting, legends is usually historical past. The time is in historical past. And folktales is usually timeless. So, it often uses like once upon a time. So, it doesn't refer to specific time. Meanwhile, for myths, it happens before the current world begins. And from the purpose, legends celebrate historical events. Meanwhile, folktales is to entertain and teach simple morals. And for myths, it explains natural phenomena. For example, like the picture that I showed you before, it is a picture of a giant eating the sun. It explains the phenomena of sun eclipses. Okay? For the truth status, legends is usually passed as true, based on real people. Meanwhile, folktales is pure fiction, so the story is not real. And myths is based on religious belief, so it is sacred. And for the factual basis, legends is usually historical but not always factual. So if you see story about legends, the place is usually real, but story behind it is usually not always real. And folktales and myths is not based on factual basis, okay? Next, like other narrative texts, myths also have a structure. So what are the structure? What is the structure? The first one is orientation. Orientation introduces the characters, the settings, and the situations. The second one is complication. Complication presents the problem or the conflict. In complication, there are rising action and climax. Climax is the highest point of the story. So, after the climax, the story will go down. That what we call resolution, the third part of structure. In resolution, there is a folding action. That means that the problem started to be solved or the conflict started to end. The fourth one is reorientation or coda. This one is optional. It includes closing comment, moral lesson, or reflection. Now, we have a story of Kala Rahu. Anyone knows this story? Okay, before we go to the story, I have a vocabulary meaning guessing activity for you. So, when the flashcard pops up, you could guess the meaning you pause the video and guess the meaning, and then you resume the video to know the meaning of the vocabulary, okay? Let's start. Okay, now that you have known the vocabulary, the difficult vocabulary that we will encounter in the story, let's start reading the story. Please click the link or scan the QR code that is shown in the presentation. Okay, let's read it. Kalarahu. Once upon a time, Batara Guru planned to hold a grand feast in Kahyangan Jonggring Salaka, the heavenly abode of gods and goddesses. He then instructed Resi Narada to gather the gods and goddesses in Kahyangan Jonggring Salaka. So here, Batara Guru is the revered teacher and leader of the gods in Japanese mythology, organized a feast in the heavens. Okay, so it happens before the current world is begin, okay? Next, during the feast, the gods and goddesses were granted the privilege to drink Toya Urip, known as the water of life. This sacred water was believed to bestow immortality upon those who drank it. Resi Narada immediately set out to gather the gods and goddesses for the feast in Kahyangan Jonggring Salaka. In an instant, the gods and goddesses from all over the world arrived at Kahyangan Jonggring Salaka. They gathered in the magnificent hall of Kahyangan Jonggring Salaka. The Toya Urip, kept in the secret jewel container, known as the Chubumanik Astagina, had been poured into a bottle made from emerald. This emerald bottle was then placed on a table made of pearls. The high-ranking gods and goddesses were invited to take the water of life first, followed by the ordinary gods and goddesses. The gods and goddesses were very pleased. The Toya Urip had a fragrant smell and was very cold, making the bodies of the deities feel very refreshed. Now, the problem starting to arise. High above in the sky, there was a giant named Kalarahu. He saw the gods and goddesses drinking Toya Urip. Kalarahu then said to himself, "If I can drink the Toya Urip like those gods and goddesses, I will surely be immortal. I will never die." Kalarahu then disguised himself as a god and joined the feast, drinking Toya Urip. However, the sun god, or Sanghyang Surya, and the moon goddess, or Sanghyang Chandra, realized that Kalarahu had disguised himself. The two deities immediately informed Sanghyang Vishnu of the intruder. Sanghyang Vishnu spotted Kalarahu drinking Toya Urip, and then he unleashed his chakra weapon. So, Sanghyang Vishnu here is the deity of preservation in Balinese Hinduism. He is like the highest gods. Meanwhile, the chakra weapon here is a powerful divine weapon belongs to Sanghyang Vishnu. So, the chakra flew and struck Kalarahu at the neck, severing Kalarahu's head and sending it into the sky. Because Kalarahu had drunk the Toya Urip down to his throat, his head remained immortal even after being separated from his body. Kalarahu realized that all of this problem was caused by the sun god and the moon goddess reporting him to Sanghyang Wisnu. Hey, sun god and moon goddess, whenever I catch you, I will swallow you alive. Kalarahu threatened the two of them. After finishing the feast, the gods and goddesses returned to their respective places. The sun god and the moon goddess also returned to their homes. However, Kalarahu began to chase the sun god and the moon goddess to swallow them. The god and goddess kept flying into the sky. Kalarahu did not give up. He continued to hunt them. Who is them in this story? Yes, them is the moon goddess and the sun god. Eventually, Kalarahu caught the sun god and swallowed him whole. However, because Kalarahu was only a head without a body, the sun god was able to escape through the opening where his neck had been severed. The same fate befell the moon goddess. When Kalarahu swallowed her, she too managed to escape. When the sun god was swallowed by Kalarahu, a solar eclipse occurred. When the moon goddess is swallowed, a lunar eclipse takes place. Even today, some Japanese people believe that solar and lunar eclipses occur when Kalarahu swallows the sun and the moon. The end. Now that we have read the story, what can you tell about the story? What is the story about? Yes, the story is about a giant named Kalarahu who is greedy. He wants to be immortal like the gods and goddesses by drinking toya urip. But he's not supposed to drink that. So Sanghyang Wisnu, as the highest gods, punish him by severing his neck with chakra weapons. Because he had drunk toya urip down to his throat, although his head is being severed from his body, his head stay immortal. So the head is flying into the sky and chasing the moon and the sun god. However, because Kalarahu is only a head without a body, when he swallowed the moon goddess and the sun god, they managed to escape. And that is how solar and lunar eclipses happens based on the ancient Japanese beliefs. Okay? So, if we have to identify the structure of the story, which events that is concluded as the orientation of the story? Yes, the part that introduces the setting. So the setting is there was once a feast held by Batara Guru. And then the rising action? Yes, when Kalarahu showed up. And the climax, the highest point of the story? Yes, it is when Sanghyang Wisnu struck Kalarahu's neck and severing it. And then the falling action is when Kalarahu realized that all this problem is caused by moon goddess and sun god. So he is chasing them and want to swallow them. And that is the resolution. What about the reorientation or coda? That is how Japanese people believe about the phenomenon of solar and lunar eclipses. So, what have we learned today? The first one is, yes, the definition of myth. Second is, what differentiates myth from legends and folktales? And the third is the structure of myth. We have identified the structure of Kalarahu. I think that's all from me. Thank you for listening.